Tara was celebrating her birthday at Disneyland and grabbing a bite to eat at Pizza Planet when her phone began to ring. It was the genetics office calling to give the results from her daughter Emmalyn's genetic test. She remembered thinking at that moment that if her daughter had 22q, she didn't want to know about it. She didn't want her baby to be labeled or for others to look at her differently. Her husband begged and told her not to answer the phone, but Tara did. And the nurse on the other line confirmed that her daughter had 22q deletion syndrome. This was the start of Emmalyn and Tara's 22q journey. Welcome to the 22q podcast. My name is Becky White, and today we have Tara, who will be sharing her 22q journey with us. Tara, welcome. Thank you for being on.
Thanks for having me.
Oh my goodness. So excited. I met Tara at the 22q Moms Retreat. Tell us, Tara, all about you, where you live, your family, what you do.
So I'm originally from California. We've been in Arizona now for 8 years. Me and my husband. Today is our anniversary. We've been married 12 years.
Happy anniversary.
So, yeah, thank you. I have a 16-year-old stepson, Kyler. My son is 10. Our son together is 10, Liam. And Emmalyn will turn 6 in November, and she's my 22 cutie.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any nicknames for Emmalyn?
She's got so many. And my nephews nicknamed her M&M because they couldn't say her name when they were little. So she's M&M, she's M, she's Emma, she's Emma Reese. If she's in trouble, it's actual Emmalyn. So
yeah.
But Emma's most likely what most people call her.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow they can't pronounce it. I'm not sure why, but
yeah,
I guess it's hard. But yeah.
And what do you do, Tara?
So right now I'm a stay-at-home mom doing her attendant care. So I say I'm a chauffeur, I'm a cook.
You're everything. You're a nurse.
A little bit of everything right now.
Cleaner.
Yeah. Still trying to juggle her being in kindergarten. So, but looking for maybe get back into the school district or some kind of leasing like I did before. Yeah.
So what did you do before?
I was an assistant manager for property management. I did it for 11 years prior to her being born. And then I took time off thinking, oh, well, I'm just going to take a break, and not knowing the journey we were going to have, and never went back. So yeah, it's been fun.
Right. So when did you have to make that decision, or did the company make that decision for you after she was born?
So I kind of wanted a break from leasing when I went on maternity leave. And I kind of I'm like, well, see if I'll go back after maternity leave. And I told my boss, I'm not ready. And then when she had her first surgery, when she was teeny tiny, it was like, I'm done. I've got to take a break. I've got to focus on all of what life has thrown at us now, and just kind of focus through everything into her at this point.
And that's hard. That's so hard, especially with these 22q kiddos. They have so many needs. And I know for myself, I had to do that as well. So
I feel like at the beginning, nobody really tells you how many specialists you're going to see. And I mean, obviously everybody's different, but I feel like every time I'd go to one specialist, they'd say, oh, and now you need to see this one. And now you need to see this one. And I'm like, I don't even know what that one does. I don't even understand where I'm going.
Right.
So, and of course I'd go to every specialist and get checked out and blood work and all that. And I remember at our first retreat, she was a year and a half. And I just remember crying, going, please tell me it's going to get better. It's going to get better. Right. And it's obviously gotten way better now that she's almost 6. But I mean, I was in the depths of it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's so much in that first year. It's all medical. How many specialists does she have?
Now we're probably down to ENT, her cleft surgeon, endo right now, GI. And then she's got 3 therapies for behavioral, for OT, and for speech. We just kind of aged out of feeding, even though we're still kind of not really done with feeding. We're just going to work on it at home. We're down to less than 2 hands now. So that's exciting.
Wow. That is exciting.
Yes, that's very exciting.
That's good.
It's the little things.
Yeah, seriously, the little ones. Can we start at the beginning? Can you share with us, how did this all start? When did you find out you were pregnant with Emma? And tell us about her journey and when you got the diagnosis, all of it.
So I we had been trying for a couple months, and my son was almost 4 at the time. And he goes, "Oh, there's a baby coming to our house." And I said, "Okay, like, whose baby?" And he's like, "Our baby." And he's like playing like no big deal. And I'm like, "What do you mean our baby?" I mean, we've been trying, but like it was like, okay, whatever. It's only been 4 months. And he goes, "Oh, it's our baby." And I'm like, "Is it a girl or a boy?" Because I really wanted a girl.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, it's a girl."
Oh my
And so I took a
gosh.
test that day and I found out I was. And I was like, I mean, it came up immediately. And I was like, "Oh my
Wow.
God." So it was, I mean, a shock, a little bit of a shock, I guess. I was super happy. We went to all, the regular checkups at 13 weeks. They started, they did an ultrasound because I was of maternal age. I was 34. I had just turned 34. And I just remember the x-ray tech kind of leaving the room. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's never a good sign. Like, and when the doctor came back in, he goes, "We need you to see a specialist." And I said, "Okay." And he's like, "I don't know everything that's wrong, but it doesn't look like things don't look great."
That's what they said.
Yeah. And I was like,
Were you,
"Okay."
were
And
you
they're like, "There's
alone?
a good possibility you'll miscarriage. Like, well, let's see what this specialist says." I go to a specialist. I think it was within like a day or two. It was pretty quick. And she was not very pleasant. And she said that they couldn't find her lungs. They couldn't find 2 chambers of her heart. Her umbilical cord was in a knot, and there was fluid filling up her head all the way down to her chest. And they said it typically means that she would have Down syndrome and she's not going to make it. And they won't see us for our next appointment at 16 weeks. And I said, "Well, she's like this big. Like, can we give her a chance? Like, maybe your computer isn't seeing everything." And she's like, it's a low possibility she's going to survive."
What?
So I stressed out for the next 3 weeks and nothing happened. And so I went back, saw a different doctor at that office who was very nice.
Oh,
And he said, "I don't know if you prayed or positive thoughts or what you did, but I can see her lungs. I can see 4 chambers of her heart. Her umbilical cord is now in a twist and the fluid is just around her heart." He's like, "So we'll evaluate her the rest of your pregnancy, but most of the time the fluid goes away." Kept going every 2 weeks. They said everything was still like the fluid was still there. We saw the cardiologist at 24 weeks. He said he saw a subclavian and a right aortic arch. And I just remember this in my ear. "There's a 1% chance she'll have this vascular ring." And I said, "Well, what's that?" He's like, "Oh, it kind of closes off the esophagus, makes feeding a little difficult. We could take it out. It's easy." Okay. He's like, "But 1% chance." Okay. 1%. He's like, "She won't need surgery. People live their whole life with this right aortic arch pumping the wrong way. As long as it's pumping, we don't care." Awesome. Cool. Sounds great to me. So I'm like, no heart surgery here. So, we'll watch her every year. Worst case scenario. And he goes, "There's a possibility she could have this syndrome, but we'll look at it when she's like born, 10 days old or so." And so I just brushed it off. I never looked into it. And I thought, well, they were wrong the first time. They're going to be wrong the second. They induced me at 39 weeks exactly. My doctor was actually moving on her due date. So he's like, "I will induce you a week early. So I'm here." I was like, that'd be great. She was out in 12 hours, like easy 3 pushes. She was launched out. We said she launched herself out. She wanted out. She was great. She was 8 pounds, 4 ounces. They said she was doing great. Her color was great. They noticed a murmur, which I said, my dad has one. He's lived his whole life, didn't know it. No big deal. But within the first 10 hours, she started like having nasal regurgitation. And I was like, that's weird. Like, I've never seen a baby do that. I've been around babies my life, like whole life. They kept her in the NICU for like 5 days and they were just watching the heart murmur. And I was like, why don't you watch the other thing? Because that's kind of weird. So we got sent home, see the cardiologist at 10 days. And he goes, "Well, I'm pretty sure she has something called 22q DeGeorge syndrome." And I said, "Well, how do you know?" And he goes, "She has an asymmetric smile." And I'm like, "What does that mean?" her lip did a dip down. We called it the reverse Elvis lip is the only way I can describe it when she was baby. And when she'd cry, it was just, I mean, slanted, and everything on the left side was just very weak. And he goes, I'm pretty sure she has it. And I said, well, okay. He's like, we'll do blood tests. We'll determine it. It took us a couple months to get blood tests. So by 4 months, they had sent us the test results, which I don't know if you want me to go into that.
No. So in that cardiology visit, when he's saying, oh, she has 22Q, she has 22Q, what were you thinking?
I started researching, which Google. I shouldn't have, because of course, the first thing you do is Google, like, what are these kids going to look like? And I only saw like, you know, the extreme cases. I didn't see that there's kids with mild conditions that can live a full life, that won't pass away from heart conditions or other hideous things they tried putting on there. And I told my husband, that's not what she has. She doesn't have that. Like that, she doesn't have that. Look at her. She's fine. I mean, yeah, her smile, it'll get better. Her ears were, you know, tiny ears and they're a little bit lower. And I'm like, that's fine. No big deal. Nobody will make fun of her. And then I think it hit me more when I went into the ENT and they told me she had a cleft palate. And I remember going, well, what does that mean? And I remember my mom saying, but a cleft palate, everyone can see. I said, no, that's a cleft lip. Like, it's totally different. Like, nobody would see this. No one would know other than the ENT. And he said, well, that's why she has nasal regurgitation and she can't keep anything down. It took us 4 months to figure that out. Like, cause I mean, every time she'd eat, we tried to tilt her up and we were thinking it was reflux. It had to be reflux. Little do we know, she had a pretty extensive palate that needed to be fixed. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So you found that out at 4 months.
4 months.
So what was her feedings like?
Everything just came out. Like, I mean, you would feed her and like, you know, you try to do the tilting up a little bit for the 30 minutes, but it would still, she would sit up and it would just, I mean, pour out. And I'm like, what is she really getting? And then they were saying, oh, she's not gaining any weight. I'm like, yeah, because nothing's staying in. Like, just, and it was everything. It was, I mean, anything she drank. It was sometimes when she started eating, it was food. So it was a scary time. They had to thicken up things. We had to do thickeners in her milk and her medicines and that kind of thing. And that definitely helped. And that was like 9 months of swallow studies. And that was horrendous. A
lot. Yeah. And so were you basically feeding her 24/7, just trying to get stuff in her?
Anything. And then all I wanted to do as a mom who had a kid with obviously some kind of special needs, I didn't know what yet, is I wanted to, breastfeed or pump or, and I couldn't because I was so stressed out. And I would sit there and one day she was still in the hospital and my husband goes, why are you pumping? Oh, it was after her surgery, but I was pumping and he goes, why are you pumping? And I said, because she needs it. She needs it. Like, of all the babies, she needs it. And he's like, you've sat here for 30 minutes. You have an ounce. And I said, but if she gets that 1 ounce, it's going to make a difference. And I did that for like a good couple months. And he's like, you got to stop. You're depressing yourself. Cause every time you look at the bottle, you're just like, there's nothing in it. But obviously I'm 99% sure it was stress. And because I tried all of the mother's milk and all that stuff and nothing.
I did the same exact thing. I pumped for 3 months for an hour. I get like that much stress. Yeah.
Oh,
God. Oh 100%. God. Yeah. It's awful. Awful. Well, thank you for sharing that. You're not the only mom that has experienced that for sure. And I feel like the feeding is such a big thing for our 22Q kiddos and just getting something in them, especially those first couple months. It's like a battle trying to figure out also what's going on with their feeding. What does their throat look like? Their anatomy is a little different. So, So other than ENT and cardiac, what other doctors were in that first year that she was seeing?
We saw ortho. He was a horrible one. I still remember his face. She was 6 months old and I'm feeling like she's finally doing better. Like we're dropping off specialists here and there. And he walks in the door. I'd never met him before. And he walks in the door and he goes, I figured she'd be brain dead after everything she's been through. And I was like, I'm sorry, what did you just say? And he's like, well, I read her chart and just by reading her chart, she should have been dead like long time ago. And I just I held it together barely. And he's like, well, we'll just give her a couple more months, see if she starts crawling. She's probably not going to crawl. She's probably not going to walk. And I remember walking to the car with her, getting in the car and calling my husband I just couldn't believe that somebody would be so cold-hearted when I felt my baby is sitting right here laughing at you and smiling at you and making eye contact with you. And you're telling me, oh, figured she'd be brain dead. So I had mentioned his name to one of our PTs we had. And I said, oh my God, I had a horrible experience at this one location. And she goes, older than dirt. And she said his last name. I said, yep. And she goes, he should have retired 20 years ago. And I said, yep.
Yeah.
Never saw him again. I saw another one that was an older man, and I had PTSD from it when I saw him. And he goes, she's doing amazing.
Good.
And that was good. She was probably a little before a year when I saw that one. And because they were talking about doing braces on her legs and talking about like that kind of thing. So we had done this like hip brace. We had bought it from like Germany or something, like, and it was supposed to bring her hips in because she would do like the butterfly sit kind of thing. And we did that for many months. She hated it. And so when I brought him in, he goes, she doesn't need that. She doesn't need leg braces. She'll start walking when she wants to walk. And I'm like, wow, this is a big night and day from that guy.
Wow.
And she was walking later on. She was like 17 months, but she walked but she wasn't gonna walk, like.
But good for you for changing doctors, because
I was not going to allow that.
No. And there's so many other doctors out there. And I think that's a really big point for 22Q parents to hear, is that there's nothing wrong with getting a second opinion. Right. And even if they're the smartest, most respected doctor out there, there's nothing wrong with getting a second opinion.
No, I agree. I always felt like, oh no, but this is the one they told us we have to go to. And I did that for a long time. I did. But now I'm like, no, I'm going to go with who I feel is going to be best for our situation. And I feel like not everyone knows about 22Q. So they're just kind of like, especially when I'd have a couple come in and say, so what does she have? Like, she doesn't look like she's delayed. She doesn't look in, it was always the look. And I was like, okay, well, I didn't know you could see internally because I can't. So thanks. So that was always I think that was my hard thing at the first 2 years of, oh, she doesn't look like she has disabilities.
Yes.
Well,
it's hard.
Guess. I mean, how do you respond to that? So,
with everything going on too, it's hard to, in those first 2 years, because our kiddos tend to look like a typical kiddo. They're baby. So how can you really tell the milestones yet? So it's hard for doctors.
Nobody's going to say, oh, they're not talking yet. No, that's, they assume, oh, they're just a baby, or because she was always so tiny. After her heart surgery, she was so tiny that for so long, probably a good 3.5, 4 years, that everyone would always say she was 2 years younger than she was. And I'm like, no. And they're like, but she's not talking. I'm like, well, she's got a speech delay and a cleft palate. So she's going to talk when she talks. It is what it is.
So when was her first surgery? What was that?
So she had open heart surgery at 6 weeks. Very unexpected. We had no idea. Like I said, they said no heart surgeries. Wow. And at 5 weeks old, she went white and limp when I was feeding her one day. And I said, oh, that's not good. And stupid me, we had just changed to the state insurance and I didn't know any better. And I brought her to the doctor's office. And I will never do it again. I will never second guess going to an ER after this. But I brought her in, and the doctor I saw, he said, she's really sick and I'm calling the ER. Do you want an ambulance or do you want to drive her? And I said, I will drive her. And so I drove her. I had Liam with me. He was 4. And I had a friend come pick him up. And I said, something's really wrong with her. And my husband met me there. They thought she had meningitis. We walked in the ER and there was just this big room and all of these doctors and nurses just like took her. And they flipped her over and they started I don't even know. I think I blanked out. Like, I was like, but she's baby. Like, what do you mean meningitis? Like, it was not. And my husband, who was an EMT for 17 years, said he knew it was bad. And so he took Liam and he's like, we're going to just walk away. And I said, oh, well, I'll just stand here and stare. Cause if she passes away right now, someone has to be with her. They found out that was clear. There was nothing. They kept her for 6 days. They kept checking the fluid around her heart, every echo. And they said they've never seen anything like her case, I guess. Every echo, there was fluid, then there was no fluid, then there was fluid, then there was no fluid. At one point, they thought she had a mass on top of her heart. And at the same time, every formula they gave her, she would throw up. So they gave her like this $80 a can formula that we were never going to be able to afford. And they're like, maybe this is what she needs, because they thought that like she was allergic to fat. And they thought that that's what the mass was. And that's what the fluid was. They said, we don't know what this fluid is. It's got to be like fat that's building up around her heart from this formula. And so they thought, we'll do this fat-free formula, which made her stop eating completely. Had to put an NG tube in. She was miserable. And I'm like, this isn't, the last day we were there, they showed me how to put it in. And I told Chris, I can't do it. I cannot do this. Like, I had a nurse friend that lived downstairs. Her baby was 1 day younger than Emma. And I said, you're going to have to help me if she takes this out. I can't do it. And she goes, we'll do it. It's fine. We'll figure it out. I said, if she's going home with this, I'm scared. So I said, I told them, give her one more chance on her normal formula that I've been feeding her. If you don't see the fluid, can we just go home and we'll figure something out? Okay, fine. So she had a couple feeds and it was fine. Like, there was no fluid. It was gone. And they're like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I'm puzzled. I have no idea what's going on. We'll send you home. God forbid she has something else. Just come straight back. Don't even go to the doctor. I'm like, no, I have learned my lesson now. And she did it again the next day. She turned purple this time and then went white and limp. And I said, something is seriously wrong with this kid. So I bring her back. A friend takes Liam. At that point, my husband's at work. My mom is flying in from California because she knows something's seriously wrong. And I told my husband, once I know more, I'll let you know, because there's no reason for you to take more time off of work. I don't know what it is. They took her in a room. They had me sign every form known to man, that God forbid something happens. She may stroke out. She may die. She may have to have open heart surgery. And I just remember going, how do I sign this? She's 6 weeks old. She's this big. Like, I mean, and they said, you have to sign it. Like, we have to tap her. So they had me leave the room. They tapped her chest. And when they did, a blood clot came through. And they said, that's not normal. We're going to take her to the OR. And I said, for open heart surgery, they're like, that's not why we're taking her. We're going to take her to do a little slit. And it was like underneath where her ribs were. And they said, we want to find out what this fluid is. It doesn't make sense. So I said, okay. So I told my husband that part. And I said, they're going to go and do this little slit. He goes, okay. He's like, well, keep me updated. About an hour and a half later, they sent me to another room and I was sitting there by myself. And I said, she's in open heart surgery. I know they're going to come to me. I have to prepare myself. I don't know what's going to happen and I have to be strong. And I'm going to cry.
I'm crying right now. Are you kidding?
I'm like, oh my God. He came in and he said, he looks at me and I said, she's opened, isn't she? And he said, yes. And he goes, how did you know? And I said, I don't know. I said, is she going to be okay? And he goes, we're doing everything we can. She's bleeding out of 3 holes. She's been bleeding out your whole pregnancy. He said she should have never survived your birth.
Oh my God.
He said, I've never seen anything like it. None of us have. And every time they'd see the fluid around her heart, my whole pregnancy, it was blood. And every time she'd get upset or she'd move around, she was bleeding out. He said, we're going to patch. I'm going to keep seeing you every hour. I'm going to keep coming in. I'm going to keep updating you. And the nurse came in and he came in and the other surgeon came in, and I couldn't tell my husband. And this is years later, he just told me that this completely crushed him, that I did this, but I kept it to myself. I told one friend and she came to the hospital. I said, I can't tell him he can't drive. If I tell him that, he'll never drive. So I held off. He picked up my mom from the airport at 5 o'clock that night. She was in open heart surgery at about 12 or 1. I held it all these hours. I cried every tear I could cry. And I was so cried out by the time he got there. And he goes, oh, I brought you dinner. Like, where's the baby? And I said, here's this nurse, Christy. She needs to tell you something. And he just lost it. And I said, that's why I couldn't tell you. And she came back to us about 9 o'clock that night, and wires and everything. And I remember going, this is our life now. Like, they said this would never happen. And then the surgeon goes, so we repaired 3 holes. We patched as close as we could to one of them. There's still a little pouch underneath it, which is what she still has. they can't call it an aneurysm because it's not growing, but it's like a pouch of blood still sitting there that we'll eventually have to do a cath for. But he's like, she's looking really good.
Oh.
And I said, and he goes, and I took out our vascular ring. And I start laughing. And he goes, why are you laughing? I said, it was a 1% chance. I said, this is the kind of kid that this kid is. She's a 1% chance now. And he goes, yeah, no, she had it. He is like, she had it pretty extreme too. We would have had to go in there again. And so we just did it. And I said, oh my God. So 5 days later, they sent this baby home with us. And I said, I can't take her. She's broken. Like she had no wires. She looked amazing. Like she had this tiny scar. And I remember going, I can't, how can I bring her home? She just had major surgery. And I just, at that time, Liam was he was 4 and he was hating us for not being home. And it was a lot for a while, for a good couple months, that he wanted nothing to do with me. Like he felt like I did it on purpose or something.
Mm-hmm.
But you never know now. Like if I say something to someone, they're like, she did not have open heart surgery. I'm like, oh, she'll show you her scar.
Yeah. That is unbelievable that she was bleeding out and she's still here with us. That is unreal. And oh my God, it just takes my breath away when you just told me that. And so how many hours was she actually in surgery? Like 10 or 12?
I think it ended up being like 8.5 or 9. Wow. And I remember going, okay, is she done now? Like, because, and I remember telling them how naive I was because I knew nothing about open heart surgery. I knew what Grey's Anatomy has showed me. And the nurse kind of giggled when I said that. I said, in Grey's Anatomy, they can close up someone in 20 minutes. And she goes, honey, no. And she goes, do you understand? And I said, no, I obviously don't. She goes, there's layers on layers that we have to cut through. And then we have to put back together and let rest and then give it time. And I said, what are you talking about? She goes, it takes a long time to put them back together. You've got to be kidding me right now.
The surgeons working on your daughter were dealing with the tiniest organs and veins. And I can't even imagine having to do an operation on a itty bitty baby.
And the funny thing is, I had said to him that I said, and by that point she had lost a pound when she had gotten into surgery. She was like 8'4" when we had her, and she was 7'9" when she went into surgery. I remember. And I remember going, oh my God, is she the tiniest baby you've dealt with? And he goes, no. And I go, what do you mean no? And he goes, I just operated on a 3-pound baby. And I said, oh my God. And I'm thinking fist, like fist is what they always tell you is the size of your heart. And I'm going, he goes, yeah, it was like, and I'm like, how? And he goes, he's like, that's what we're here for. Like, and I'm just going, oh my God, so, I remember showing at the hospital, they have like this little section I showed Liam to try to make him understand it for, but they showed the different sizes of hearts based off of like an infant or a preemie, an infant, and then like a child and an adult to show him. And I said, this is how big your sissy's heart. And they cut it open. And I remember him saying, did they use a spoon or a scissors?
Oh.
And I go, not a spoon, probably like a tiny knife or like, and he goes, oh, so they didn't have to scoop anything out. No. And he goes, oh, okay. And that was it. Like he never asked about it again. Like it was her boo-boo. We're very careful with her boo-boo. And that was it. But I just remember going, how do I explain this to him? And he's like, oh, okay, whatever. That's it. Cool.
No, it is. I think it's important to mention, the sibling side to this whole 22q world is that we do spend, as parents and caregivers, we spend so much time taking care of our 22q kiddos that we do worry about the siblings. We worry that they're getting enough care and attention. And you mentioned Liam kind of being upset with you and your husband. How is your relationship with him now?
Definitely better. He has his moments sometimes where he'll be like, do you remember when it was just the 3 of us? Don't you miss
good
when it was
old
just
days.
the 3 of us? And I said, yeah, it was fun when it was the 3 of us, but you don't think it's fun with the 4 of us? He goes, it would just be nice if she didn't have therapy all the time. And I said, oh, I agree. And I told him the other day, I said, do you think I like going to therapies? And he goes, well, yeah. And I said, why would I like it? It's taking hours out of my day to sit there. And I said, and I know it's helping her, and that's why we're doing it. And I said, you understand, she's not always going to have therapy. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, but if we do it now when she's little, she won't need it when she's your age. And he's like, yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's like, he has his moments sometimes where he just, feels lonely and feels like, well, I'm sick too. And I'm like, okay, what are you feeling? So,
Yeah.
but I said, I would never want either one of you to be sick. Like I have
Yeah.
never asked for her to have anything to make her special or different. Or, I said, my whole thing is I had always told him when they were in the same school, which is this year, you have to protect her. Like you have to make sure nobody makes fun of her and this and that. And she's the one it's like our joke that she's the bully and that she'll be the one making sure that Liam doesn't have bullies anymore. Because she's just so like very protective over him, and it's hilarious. And they've had to pull him out of class a couple times. We've had a little bit of behavioral stuff for her. Like she doesn't want to do PE. So they say she's so cute, she doesn't have to. I said, no, that's not how it rolls in my house. Like she is fully capable. Like she's fine to take like breaks, but she can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll take him out of class and he's like, she was crying today. And I'm like, why was she crying? She was asking for you. I'm like, okay, well, you told her it was fine. She was going to see me in an hour and to go back to PE. Just punch her back.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So it's like, he does like having her there. He likes knowing that he could protect her. Mm-hmm. They're very just love-hate relationship most times, but like, I mean, she'll beat up on him and be mean to him and say he's bullying her is her new thing. You're bullying me. You're being mean to me. Because he repeats things she says and she's like, you're mean to me. And then she'll go, I sleep with Liam. I sleep in his room. And it's like this whole like tears pouring. And I was like,
yeah,
you just said how much you hate it. I don't understand it. But they at least they're getting a lot closer now that they're older too. So I think it's getting a little easier now.
Good.
So
good. It's good that they have that bond.
Oh yes.
That's good. It sounds like they get along for the most part.
For the most part. I mean, it's normal, but
as much as little kids can get along, right?
Exactly.
That's good. So what other things, let's see, we talked about the heart operation. Quickly, could you just tell us like how many other operations she's had and what other procedures you found helpful for her?
So she's had 5 sets of tubes in 5 years. Yeah, she's got some pretty bad ears. Right now we're up to about 50 ear infections. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. Do they fall out? What happens? Why 5?
Most of them they've taken out. Because for her, they've tried different types of tubes. The T tubes have been the best ones to work for her because of her tiny eardrums. But even with tubes, she has fluid that goes behind her eardrum. So we just had 50 or 51 ear infections. Like we only had like 3 before tubes got put in. So all of these have been with tubes. And they're like, well, at least it's not hurting her. I'm like, yeah, but she's like this all the time because she always has something that's muffling. So she's had 5 of those. The last one has actually lasted the longest. I think we're at like maybe 16 months from the last one. Normally they last about 6 months before they go in there and either one's fallen out or they take them out and kind of replace them, clean out the ears. She's had a cleft palate repair last September. This June she had a VPI for the second part of the cleft surgery. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, she had her tonsils and partial adenoids taken out. And then she had the rest of her adenoids taken out a few months later. So they were like, well, we were hoping, like they did the tonsils and partial adenoids before the cleft because they said they needed the extra space in there. And we don't want to take out all the adenoids if you don't have to. I'm like, cool, then don't. If you don't need to, don't take it out. And then before the VPI, he's like, well, I want to take out the rest of the adenoids. And I'm like,
isn't that recovery time a long time for little kids?
So my son's was easy. Like he was like outpatient, tonsils and adenoids. Emma's the opposite. It's just
our 1% kiddos.
Yeah. Emma, they were like, oh, we'll keep her overnight just because she's a cardiac kid. I'm like, okay, totally fine. 5 days later, we left the hospital. My child decides she doesn't want to eat or drink. She has to get IVs. She decides she doesn't want to sleep, and it's miserable. And so it was the same with the cleft palate surgery. It was another 5 days. They said she'll be out in a day and a half. They said, no, we won't. She stopped drinking completely. On day 4, one of the nurses walked in. Mind you, I was trying to prepare for this. And with the cleft, if you don't know, they can only have liquids for their first 2 weeks. And so that's all they would give us at the hospital was liquids. And she was starving. And I was like, well, you can have liquids. So I brought a medicine dropper with me. I had a weird feeling and I brought a medicine dropper and I'm like sucking up orange juice and I'm shooting it in her mouth. And I'm just like, and at one point she was just like screaming and I was like, you just need to drink so we can go home. I just want to go home. And I was like, you'll do so much better at home, which she always does. And the nurse walks in, I'm straddling her. And then it's in the same nurse and she saw how stubborn she was. And I'm like, I turn around, I'm like, I just want her to drink some juice. And she goes, you do what you need to do. She's stubborn. Oh, I don't care. She goes, I know you're not doing anything. She goes, you get her to drink. And I'm like, okay. So by the next day we finally went home. Please, I just want to go home. And she went home and she was like starving. And the surgeon's like, don't let her eat for 2 weeks. Only, soft stuff. Well, this kid is like just begging. And I'm like, how do you not feed your kid when they're begging for food? And so my husband goes, I got her French fries. I'm like, oh my God, French fries. He goes, I'm just going to smush them up. So we did a lot of toddler style for like in the first like couple days. Once she got home, like day like 7, we had broke up like French fries and yogurt and little tiny pieces of fruit. We made it like she was a 1-year-old basically. And she was just like, oh my God, devouring it. And I'm like, oh my God, this surgeon's gonna be so mad at me. He's gonna be so mad at me. So I go back at 2 weeks post-op. He goes, hey, brings in all of his students. He goes, oh, here's my troublemaker. Oh, this girl. And I'm like, if you only knew. And he goes, how's she doing? I said, you check it out first and then we'll talk. And he's like, I don't like that. I'm like, just check her out. He's like, yeah, it's feeling great. It looks amazing. I'm like, great. How often are they hungry after surgery? He's like, never. What? I said, my kid was eating on day 7. He's like, what? Oh, he goes, you're killing me. You're literally killing me. And I'm like, but it looks okay.
Yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do.
And it was the same thing with the VPI. The VPI was much better. My friend Courtney, that her son had it 3 months prior to Emma. And I said, what do I do? I'm not doing 5 days again. She's just too stubborn. She said, steroids, make sure she takes steroids. And they give her the steroids because of the throat being narrow that they freak out because they feel like they can't swallow. So I begged the doctor. I said, please give her the steroids. Okay, we'll try anything at this point. Yeah, she was drinking that day. No big deal. We were out in a day and a half. We were home. And I was like, oh my God, I love you so much. You have no idea. She was, we still didn't stick to the diet very much, but this one was also not the cleft, not the palate. So we weren't worried about things getting stuck, but she still had a soft diet. But because she's got so many feeding issues and just so particular behavioral with her eating, that if she wasn't gonna eat it, she wasn't gonna eat it. So, but we did a lot of soft stuff. Yeah, those are her surgeries. I was like, I feel like I'm missing.
So good to know for the steroid, in case anyone's listening that is planning on having that for their child. Steroids. Not every child's different. So talk to your doctor, obviously.
Exactly,
it's a good tip.
But if they have any airway, it could help. So
that's good.
Yes,
good.
I will take
it.
I'm
glad she doesn't have any more surgeries, knock on wood, in her horizon. That's awesome.
Exactly.
And her heart's good.
Heart's good. They will do a cath at some point, is what the last cardiologist had talked about, just to kind of more research why that pocket of blood is still there. We've gone every 6 months after her surgery. Now we're on yearly this last year. And he goes, it's still 4 millimeters. So it's not getting bigger. It's nothing that I need to like do much with. He's like, I do want to close it off and just kind of research it. But I'm curious what the next cardiologist will say, because he just retired. So they may not want to touch it at all at this point. Who knows? Yeah. But he, oh yeah. Yeah, he was, I said he was never allowed to retire. We just loved him so much. And he goes, it's coming soon. I'm like, no, I'm not
That's
ready.
the worst. It's the worst when your favorite surgeon goes away. Oh,
Every
it's the
time, every
worst.
time.
Yeah, always. Okay, so we talked a lot about her medical history. Can you tell me like a little bit about how her physical challenges are, like mobility, OTPT, speech, toileting? How's all of that going for her?
So we started first therapies when she was 4 months old. We did PT and said I was insane to start a baby in therapy. And
Mm,
I went off of what specialists told me. So they told me it would help her so that she wasn't too delayed when it came to crawling and walking and standing. So of course I was like, I'll do whatever they suggest. So we went to the hospital and did a therapy there. And we were with her for probably a good year. Maybe we were there. We did OT when she was like 9 months old. Like she was doing amazing. She didn't need her anymore. And I was like, oh, last day of her first PT though, she decided to walk across the room. And I'm like, oh my God.
wow.
And, I feel like with our kiddos, they are always like, oh, they're never going to do this. And the PTs are always pretty positive, but the specialists not so much. And we called it her army crawl. And then when they finally got her up on her knees, it took a while. I think she was like 13 months when she was finally knee crawling. And then I remember Christmas Day, we were at a friend's house. And I'm like, yeah, she's been walking a little bit here and there. And then we turn around and she walked across the room. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, they said she'd never do it. So, and she looked at me like, what? I've been just like holding on to this for months and no big deal. They put her in feeding therapy because they didn't know if it was sensory, but she was just super picky, wouldn't eat anything. And that lady sadly made no change at all. Like we were with her for over a year and she was in a high chair at that time. So I'd say she was probably about a year and a half to maybe closer to 3. And Emma was not talking at all at that point. And she was trying to explain to her, you don't have to eat just string cheese. You can eat shredded cheese or a block of cheese and I mean, she only liked the string cheese that had the orange and the white. It couldn't be just white. It couldn't be just orange. Like it was a thing. So I remember one day she was playing with, it was there. They do the whole like, oh, play with it and put it to our lips and we taste it and whatever. And we were sitting there for 45 minutes and Emma, 45 minutes of this. And she said, please, Emma, it's so good. And then she's like, so then she goes, okay, I think it's time to throw it away. And Emma takes it and she just goes to the trash can and throws it away. And I go, and she goes, that's behavioral. That's not sensory at all. And I go, what do you mean behavioral? Like, what does that mean? And she goes, behavioral is, I don't want to touch it. You're not going to force me to touch it. I'm not looking at it. And I said, yep, that's everything. Yes.
That's Emma.
and I mean, still to this day, this kid will not touch meat. The only meat, as I say, is McDonald's nuggets.
Yeah. What are her like top foods now?
Her top foods are nuggets and fries from McDonald's with an apple juice and ranch. She loves blueberries and strawberries and bananas, peanut butter and jelly with no crust. If there's any crust, forget it. Like, forget it. I've gotten like the shape cutters for school and she loves those now. So that's been working.
Nice.
Mac and cheese in a cup. It cannot be in a box. You can't try to reheat it. Has
to be in the cup.
Has to be in the cup.
Do you have like the cups like stored so that way when you make it in the big box, you could just pour it in there? Nice.
I've tried that. It doesn't work.
I've
tried it all. I've tried it all. I've tried making cheese look like string cheese. Like I've tried it all. No, she literally like last night she told me she wanted carrots and ranch. I'm like, okay, let's have some carrots and ranch. Awesome. She ate like 2. She goes, I'm done. I'm like, you're not done.
No.
What? Just eat it. I mean, it's very like orange juice, and the only apple juice she'll drink is the Honest apple juice. And I've tried watering down every other apple juice because it's expensive and hard to find, and it doesn't matter. She knows the difference. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, you're killing me. You're literally killing me right now. Mm-hmm. So we just finished feeding therapy literally last week. She's actually leaving. So we were like, we're going to take a break. We know what to do at this point. It is what it is. She'll eat a little bit for her. She won't eat anything for me. She is what it is what it is at this point. Yeah, we're still in OT with a new one. We've been with him for about a year and a half. He seems to finally be getting through to her.
What are her challenges? Like,
so her challenges for OT right now that we're kind of focusing on, handwriting, we're really struggling. She just doesn't have the grip that she needs. And we've done the special pencil grips, and he's tried weighting it down. And so we're doing that right now. We're doing a lot of balance. He just doesn't have the balance at all. And he's been working with her. He's like, I feel like it just, with her, he thinks it's part of a brain thing that the memory is not there. Like, you have to like reiterate the same things over and over to her. And then she'll be like, oh, you wanted me to stand like this, or only right side dominant, writing with her right hand, and that kind of stuff, which is totally fine. Obviously, weakness issues on all counts for OT right now. Speech, we're definitely pushing, now that we have the surgeries, we're pushing a lot of letters right now. B, P, D, T, H, S.
That's hard. Those are hard.
And it's so many letters. And it's just, before I had a kiddo in speech of any kind, I was like, talking's easy, right? It comes second nature. But she never had a chance to get those letters out. So now it's like we're reteaching her how to say boo, and she goes boo, and I'm like, no. And so we're a little bit at a crossroads of like how else to help, because this speech therapist has been our longest. She's been our 5th one, and we've had her for over 2 years. And she knows her, and she pushes her, and she's loving, but she knows when Emma's going to have a breakdown. So she's starting to think maybe we need a second specialist or speech therapist to kind of come and bring her angle to it too. And October, we're 4 months after surgery at this point. We're hoping that they would get out, but if you say it 4 times, she'll say boo, but it's 4 times that you have to keep, come on. So, she's trying. She's really trying. And the therapies, if I didn't have them, I don't know where she would be. Exactly. I'm super thankful for all the therapies. I may have had many moments of crying in the car, of being exhausted driving back and forth, but I've never regretted going.
Right.
And so for everyone who's like, oh my God, you're putting your baby in speech, she's only this much. It wasn't just speech for her to like get into, like, because I think a lot of people don't understand that speech therapists aren't just speech. They're feeding, and they're helping with the mobility of the mouth. Right. And like, she had the low tone in her cheeks. So we had to do like the chewy things, and then the chewy necklaces, and, things that like, I didn't know about either. So I get the stupidity of people thinking, oh, you don't need these therapies. That's stupid. You do. And they're super helpful. And I promote it to anyone that's on these mom sites for anything, is like, oh, they suggest that you should do it. Like, it's not going to hurt. It's not going to make them go backwards. It's only going to go forwards.
Exactly. And I think you made a great point in that, it can be frustrating that she's not to a certain point yet, but think of if you didn't do any of these therapies over these years, think of where she would be.
But like it's little achievements. And we'll take the little wins at this point. And sometimes when none of us get it, she'll get the tablet and she'll be like, I tried to say, and then she'll like play you a sentence. And I'm like, okay, I didn't get that. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much.
So she does have a tablet.
Yeah. So we got the AAC almost 2 years ago now.
Did you find it helpful for her?
Oh,
do you recommend it?
She started talking right after that.
Wow.
I think just like hearing it back at her, a pathologist that set up the AAC for her speech therapist, now the speech therapist at school, they said they've never seen any kid take to it as quickly as she did. Like, she'll tell you full sentences. She'll be like, Mom, I need a Go-Gurt. Please. Thank you. I love you. Hugs.
She has stuff to say.
Well, it's like we were talking about her reading, and I said, I'm worried about her reading because, the speech isn't there. And I said, but I think once she gets it, she knows the word can. It's on there. We just upgraded her to more buttons like a month ago. So, and she knows where all of them are. And I'm like, I'm so glad she took to it, because I know a lot of kids, it's difficult. It's so many buttons. It's so much to learn, but she wanted to. And she'll be like, where's my green? Because it's got like a green border around it. And I'm like, it's right there. She goes, oh, good. Okay. And then she feels like she can get out whatever she needs to say.
Yeah.
So It's
Good.
helped a lot with emotions. I feel like because we had behavioral counseling for a little while too. And I've noticed she was perfect for the behavioral counselor, but for us, we get it. And she goes, I don't see anything you're seeing. And I'm like, but I feel like a lot of our behavioral stuff at the beginning came through the lack of communication and her not being able to say what she was feeling or how hungry she was or what she wanted, you know. And so like the tablet definitely like pushed her over the edge that she's like, I'm angry. And I'm like, oh, you're angry? Why are you angry? Let's talk about it. And she's like, oh, and then she's like, okay, wait, they want to know. Like, and it wasn't just like her feeling like we're ignoring her because we weren't ignoring her. We just didn't understand what she was saying. And we were trying so hard. So, I mean, even like I felt like potty training, like that was definitely a hard thing. I know you're talking about that. She started at like 17 months, but it was like, and she'd go good for like a couple months and then she would start having accidents. And I think we did potty training like 4 times. And I said, you know, I'm not going to force her. I'm just going to let her do whatever. And I think we were finally like potty trained by 4, but a lot of her issues are GI. It wasn't, I don't think a cognitive thing or any of that. Right. I feel like she didn't know when she was going to have accidents.
She physically didn't know.
Had no idea.
When,
and that's
which
something
so
that we have
hard. Mm-hmm.
We've had medication since she was probably 4 months old and she's been on it forever. And, you know, I've noticed the times where she's eaten horribly over the weekend, having like being at someone else's house that it's going to be like a horrible week. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, we know what to look for at least now. Like the accidents sometimes at night are few and far between. And like, she'll wake up and be like, I'm dry. I'm like, that's amazing. Like, so we're trying to like take the little wins because I mean, once she does have it, I talked to the GI, she goes, you know, that bedwetting is due to constipation for a lot of kids. And I'm like, no, I did not. And she goes, yeah. So sometimes she doesn't realize that like, that's part of it. And I'm like, so she's like, I'm fine with her being in pull-ups till she needs to be out of pull-ups at nighttime. That's totally fine. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, like, because, you know, you're always thinking, well, that person said their kids potty trained at nighttime at this age. And I think that's the hard thing about being on a lot of mom groups that don't have special needs kids is you think, oh my gosh, my kids should have been further along in X, Y, and Z. They're not, but we need to understand they're in their own category. They're on their own time. And, you know, as frustrating as it may be, it's just how it is. And we'll just roll with the punches as they come. You know, it's not a big deal.
How long did it take you to get to that statement? That is a great statement to make. I think every parent of a 22q kid gets to that phase eventually, but at first it is so hard not to compare your kid to your friends' kids, to your family members. And how long did it take you to get to that point?
Probably 5 years. I mean, she's going to be 6. I feel like a lot of the people that I surround myself now with are people that have special needs kids. 2 of my best friends, both of their sons have autism. So I feel like I can vent out a lot to them and they get it. Like their kids were a little bit more delayed and their kids weren't talking. And so I do feel like I surround myself more with that now. And I mean, it's a secluding thing having a kid with special needs to begin with. Like you feel like nobody understands. And when you're going to all these appointments, they're going, oh, can't you just skip it? And they're like, it's not that easy. And if it's going to help her, I'm going to just do whatever it takes. And I have a friend that I love to death. And she has a little guy that's a little bit older than Emma. No issues, like typical kid. And on many occasions, she has said to me, I don't know how you do it. And I said, you have to do it. Like, it's not like I can give up. Do I have breakdowns? All the time. All the time. Are they less frequent? Yes. Way less frequent now. But it's also, it's an isolating thing that I think it's come to my attention that I'm okay with it now. Like it took a long time because I just wanted someone to understand me and to just tell me that it's going to get better. And nobody could for a long time. Like I wasn't in any heart mom groups for many years. I think she was 2 by the time I got into one. And I was like, nobody understands what I'm going through. And then I think Emma was, she was 1.5 years when I had really talked to anyone Courtney was the first one I had talked to, because someone had said, oh, my friend's son has that. And I'm like, no way. Like, I've never even heard of this. Like, your friend's son has this. And it was nice just to be able to talk to Courtney and go, your kid's going through that too? Like, it's normal? Because I stopped Googling stuff after a while. Yep. I didn't want to know. I feel like a lot of my friends with whatever was going on with their kids, they felt like, I'm going to Google everything. And I think my thing was, the more I Googled, the more depressed I got. And because my kid wasn't like every other kid. Obviously, when it comes to 22q, I feel like there's such a range. There's, okay, yeah, you know, like at the retreat, my kid didn't have a heart condition or any of that stuff, but they had speech delays. Or my kid had speech delays, but they didn't have, you know, low tone. Like, nobody, I don't think any of the kids have exactly the same. And like I said, Emma's heart condition, nobody, like, and they said it's not 22q related. The right aortic arch and the subclavian and the vascular ring, yes. But the bleeding out they had no idea where that came from. So it's, you know, it's hard, because you just want everyone to go, yes, I understand. And it's going to get better. And it's going to be amazing. And she's going to do crazy, awesome things in her life. And I think that's my hard thing, is that I want to know that. That's the part I want to know. And even with going to the retreats, the first one I was very hesitant to go. I almost didn't go. Courtney was the only one I knew. And I said, there's going to be like 30 other people there. And my anxiety after having Emma was just like through the roof, and depression. And I was like, no one's going to want to talk to me. Like, who would want to talk to me? Like, I have nothing to give, is what I felt at that time. I had nothing to share with anyone that, like, and it was, not to go off topic, but it was such like an amazing thing to be around moms that said, yeah, it gets better. And I've been there, and my kids are in their 30s and they're working jobs and they finished high school and college. And that was my hard thing, is thinking she's going to live with me forever, which is fine if she is. And if that's what it is, that's fine. And I'm okay with that. And I've come to terms with that. But I also want to know that I'm going to give her a chance to do something else. And I think, like, even with this retreat, hearing that, like, you know, there are some moms that their kids do live with them. And I know that had to be very difficult to hear, because you always think my kids are going to go off and they're going to have their own lives and their own families. And I think that's all we want for our kids, is just them to be happy, and
exactly.
Not to be seen as different, you know? So
we just want them to be happy. At the end of the day, you just want them to be accepted, to find their group of friends, and to be happy. Like,
exactly.
And
like, I remember, like I said, I remember researching 22q when they had started testing her for it, and they tested her several times before they finally got the labs back that had enough blood for them to get whatever they needed. And I remember them telling me, okay, we'll let you know when they come in. And I said, okay, number one thing, do not call me April 19th. I said, April 19th was my birthday. I was 35 years old. I was in Disneyland. I did not want my trip ruined. If she has it, I don't want to know about it. And I remember sitting in the Pizza Planet, and I sat there and I saw the number, and I said, they're going to tell me right now. And my husband goes, don't answer it. And he said, no, I think I need to hear it. And I shouldn't have answered. And I answered it, and she said, it's what we thought. It is 22q. We'll talk to you more about it when you get home. And I said, okay. I had a full panic attack. I had never had a panic attack in my life. I told my husband to stay at Disneyland with my mom to have fun. I was going to take the kids back to the room and have a nap. And he goes, you're going to go by yourself? Yeah, I need to go by myself. And I don't even know how I got back to the room, because I remember it being really far away and getting in the room. And all I wanted was the kids to take a nap and me to cry. And I cried while they were all crying, because nobody wanted to take a nap. And I just had a full on, just like, why? Like, why are they labeling my baby? Like, and you don't realize once they say that your kid has anything, it's just, it made me look at her differently and wonder, like, what is everyone going to say? And a lot of times when I would post things on Facebook, when I was open to sharing about appointments and stuff like that, my mom would say, take that off. Nobody needs to know. And I remember thinking, but what if it can help somebody else? So I had always shared the good, the bad, the ugly. And there was a lot of ugly for a long time. And there was a lot of times where I said, I just want to post something positive, but I don't have it yet. And so I feel like now that I can, I post as much as I can. And if it's the heart websites and if it's the 22Q, one of the moms came up to me and she said, I see your post all the time. And I said, oh God, like have you been posting like that much? She goes, no, I love it. Like, she goes, because my little one's a little younger than yours. And I need to know. And I said, that's what I wanted to post so that people understand that like, it's scary, but there's so many of us out there and it's nice. It does get easier. It does get better. And I mean, she's doing amazing. I am struggling with the school stuff. Like you were talking, like we're going to talk about, like we're struggling with that right now, but it'll get better. It'll get better.
What helps you through those hard times? What do you do to take care of you?
I haven't done a lot lately. I've definitely gained weight from stress, and that has been my thing that I need to get back into. And I know that once I get back into just taking a walk and just zoning out and having music on, I know it'll be better. And like I talked to a friend who just lost like 70 pounds, and I'm like, she's like, just take one walk a day, just one walk, 20 minutes, just get away from your kids and just like zone out. And I'm like, that's where I'm at. That's what makes me happy, is just kind of that. And I take pictures on the side. I just love taking pictures. So I have like a lot of friends and family that I just, friends of friends now. I have some neighbors I'm taking, and it's just like, I feel like that's my happy place right now. And just seeing smiling faces. And I just took up pictures of a family the other day. All three boys have autism. And she goes, oh, I'm so sorry. And I said, why are you sorry? This is how they are. Like, I have pictures of my daughter crying for her birthday pictures that I've taken of her. That's how she was at 4. Like, that's how I want people to I know like everybody wants it to look picture perfect. It's not picture perfect. And I think that's why I like photography, is just, I kind of get the goofy pictures and the ones of them crying. I have him like literally in one of the several pictures like this. And I said, that's just how he was. He's 3. And so she's like, thank you for understanding. And I said, maybe that's what I need to kind of veer toward, is doing special needs photography, because it doesn't bother me. Like,
that's a great
there's only
idea.
one girl I know that does it. And I said, well, that's where I think I need to go to. So I'm looking more into doing that, and just, we just want to remember our kids always being happy. And I think that's that one picture of them smiling. And you're like, yeah, write me in that one, I guess.
Yeah. No, it's next to impossible to get that perfect picture. But you were mentioning school. What's going on with school? How's IEP stuff? And then I also kind of wanted to mention, how is your daughter's like mental health, social, emotional? Like, how's she doing?
So literally yesterday I was talking about an IEP, because hers is coming up in December, and her OT is suggesting having OT come into school, which we haven't had yet. We haven't had the need in school, but now we do, with the handwriting. And now I'm starting to have concerns of possible dyslexia. And so I just kind of like, at this point, I'm tackling whatever comes ahead of us. So they had called me and they're like, oh, well, it's not until December. We can amend things if we need to. I'm like, okay, great. Like, cause I want to. We are in a charter school now. Last year she was in a special needs public school. I am definitely noticing the difference. This school I do love very much, and my son is thriving there now. And so I had hoped that it would be better, and maybe it will by the time the IEP comes, but I had said about wanting more OT. These are my reasons. She just had like her first quarter testing, which for kindergarten is like, tell me your ABCs and that kind of thing. Obviously it's harder for her because she doesn't talk a lot, but I had asked if we could add the speech therapist in the days that she does have it, so that maybe like having 2 people hear her, since the speech therapist knows more of what she's saying. And they're like, oh yeah, that shouldn't be a problem, blah, blah, blah. She calls me like half an hour later, and I go, here it goes. Yeah, the speech therapist is really busy. So I don't know how we're going to be able to have her for testing when Emma has testing, but me or this other lady that do language will be able to be there. I said, I'll compromise with that, I guess, for now. And I said, okay. And I said, because, her teacher was testing her like 1 to 20 and she just had she's like, I have to test her differently than the other kids, obviously. But she like had like mixed up numbers and it was like, okay, where's 11? Where's, well, Emma, I understand, but her, 16, 17, all kind of, sound the same because she doesn't say S. So, so they said they'll help her. And then she goes, oh, and about OT. And I said, oh, here it comes. Here it comes. We already pay a lot of money to your school for therapies. And I don't know if we're going to be able to get her an OT because it's very expensive. And I said,
No.
oh. So I said, she goes, we can talk about that for IEP and see if there's something we can do. And I said, well, that's kind of a deal breaker for me. That is something I really want. And I said, I guess we'll talk in December. So I did talk with Donna, our advocate, and I kind of told her. And so she suggests me looking into the public schools around here. It was not something I want to do, but I feel like same thing with everything else. If it's going to help her long run, I need to move her. So that's my research for this week, is to find out which is the best one around me to possibly switch her so that she can get the services she needs without me getting a guilt trip of how expensive it is.
Right.
So that's, and then I started thinking like, do I do just extra OT outside of school? And then but it's like, he feels like she needs it in school. So it's like, I don't want to give up on the rights she should have. So that's been my struggle. I cried a little bit yesterday about it. I had a long talk with my husband. He's like, what's going to be best? I said, I don't know yet. So I'm going to have to research. And I feel like a lot of that is the pressure on me. I have to decide. I have to figure out what's best because I'm here all day long dealing with it. So I had a good cry to my friend with her son that has special needs. And I said, this is how I'm feeling. And she goes, just let it out. And I'm like, I feel like it's a lose-lose situation. I don't want to take her out of the school she's comfortable at, where she knows the counselor and the front staff and she hugs the principal every day, but long run, she's 5. And if I keep her there and it doesn't get easier, it's going to be harder later on. So I'm at a crossroads.
Yeah, you're at a crossroads, and schooling is so tricky with the 22Q kiddos. We changed our son's school and it was awful.
Same.
Awful. Yeah.
And that's
because then they ask like, oh, can I go back? I miss my old friend. And it's like, oh my God. And it's like, they don't understand why you're doing it, especially at a young age. It's awful.
And that's why I think that, and then it's like, my friend said, well, would you move Liam? And I'm like, it's like, he's finally in a school where he had a little bit of bullying, which I figure is every school, but this last like year and a half has been better. And I'm just like, I don't want to move him. And then him think, well, now I have friends and you're going to move me because of her. So it's like,
it's hard.
Yeah. So I think having a full day of kindergarten is definitely taking a toll on her. They also don't do PE until 2:30 in the afternoon, 2 days a week, and they're out at 3:30. So she's already exhausted. So she had like the first month, I didn't realize it was as bad as it was, but the teacher's like, so she doesn't like going to PE. And I was like, oh, good for her. Like, she's still going to go to PE. And she's like, well, she'll go, but like sometimes she'll walk in the front office because they do the PE like in the gym and it's right by the front office. And so she'll walk in the front office and they're like, oh, here's Emma. I'm like, no. And then the times that she would be in the gym, she'd be sitting in the teacher's aide's like lap. And so one time I walked there, she had her head like in the girl's lap. And I said, no. Yeah. And she's like 18, 19 years old, very sweet. And Emma loves her. And that's great and all. But I told her, no, you have to stop. She has to know she can do this. She's capable of doing PE for 30 minutes twice a week. And if she needs a break, she can walk to the wall. She can take a break, get some water and come back. And she goes, okay, but she's just so cute. I'm like, well, so thankful that you think my daughter's cute, but she's also using it. She knows that you don't know her yet. And she's smart. And so like, there's been a couple times because the pickup line is so long. I'll get there like an hour early and read a book sometimes. And I've walked in there to watch her. And it was last week or the week before. I see her teacher turn her around and walk her back into the gym. And I go, thanks for that. Like, I appreciate that. And she's like, oh, no, no, no. I'm pushing her back because I told the teacher, I said, I know she has special needs and you know she has special needs, but she's capable.
She's
And
capable.
she goes, okay. And I said, if we need to come up with some way, like to bring in her behavioral counselor or whatever. So she came up with a reward chart. When she's good in PE, she gets a sticker. And after certain stickers, she gets picked out of the toy thing. Totally fine. She loved that. And then the PE teacher let her help her. So she likes being a helper. So that helped. But then I had to explain to the PE teacher, you don't have to let her help you every time. Like, there's going to be other kids that are going to get jealous, and that's okay for her not to be okay sometimes.
Good point.
She's not your only student. She goes, I know. So she has her now, okay, go sit in your chair, go put your things away, go sit on the carpet. She goes, every time she does it, she gets a stamp. And that's been our struggle. Like yesterday, I go, how'd school to go? She goes, I cried.
Yeah.
Okay. And she goes, why? I said, why'd you cry? She goes, I missed you. I said, that's okay to miss me, but you don't need to cry. Like, you're a big girl. You're going to be 6 now. Like, do you need to cry? And she goes, no. And I said, okay, well, you don't need to cry.
It's hard when they're transitioning from like the shorter days to the longer days. It is so hard. It's hard for any kid, never mind our kiddos, and understanding, this used to be really fun. We used to color and then have a snack and then go play outside. And then I'd go home. Why do we have to actually do work now?
This is too much.
Yeah. Too much. I'm stressed out.
I'm 5 and I'm stressed.
Exactly. Oh, that's awesome. I feel like all of these kiddos, I always say that my son's a heart stealer. Like, once you meet him, there's no going back. Sounds like your daughter's the same way.
She definitely, like, we always say she picks her people. So like, it'll be new people and she'll just kind of like scan the room, and then she'll just go and sit with whoever that random person is. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. And they're always usually pretty good about it. But like I said, I don't know what it is, but I feel like they have a feeling for certain people that they're like, you're okay. I'm going to like you.
It sounds like your family's awesome. And it sounds like you have a really good support system with all the other moms that you have. And I was just wondering, would you be willing to share any struggles that maybe your friends and family may not see as a parent with a 22Q kid?
I vent a lot to my mom about the therapies and stuff like that. And the only way she's really understood is coming. Like, when she comes down to visit like twice a year, I'll go, oh, you're coming to speech. You're coming to OT. Because she's always like, well, you just need to talk to her more. You just need to, and I said, that's not it. Because she was so quiet for so long, and she'd go to my parents' house and they'd go, yeah, you can ask for that. And I said, she's not going to ask for that. She's going to just point at things until she gets her way. And I said, she'll talk when she wants to talk. And so I think that was like my biggest struggle for anyone, is just like, she's on her own timeline. If she doesn't want to do something, she's not going to do it. If she doesn't like feel comfortable with it, she'll just literally stare at it. And so I feel like everybody's, with typical kids, okay, well, just punish them. It's not that easy. Like, punishments for these kids, they don't understand, because like, I feel like she's got a little bit of a memory loss kind of thing, because she'll forget why she's in trouble. So that's been like a thing where people are like, oh, you're just letting her walk all over you. And it's like, no, that you're not seeing what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. Hearing all the time that we're not pushing her enough, or we're not, just put food on her plate, she'll just eat it. No, she won't. She will starve herself. And we have tried that. Even this feeding specialist says, just let her, put one thing she likes on there. She'll eat that one thing and literally throw the plate at you. I wish it was just a picky eater, because I was a picky eater, but I eat everything now. So maybe later on it'll get better, but I'm not gonna force her anymore. Like, I feel like, I can nudge her, but I will not force her to do things anymore.
The thing is people don't see all the other meals that you did make for years trying to get her to eat. And like you said before, you were making your own string cheese, right? That's what you said, like to try to, like anything. All the things you did. And if she likes McDonald's chicken nuggets and fries and it fills her belly, then geez, just give her the nuggets and fries. It's like, okay, well, can we try a fruit with it at least? Can we just try something else? I know.
It's just so unhealthy. It's just so gross.
You're just surviving. It's
really
one day at a time. Like, Just do what you got to do, and I guess I just want to like close with, if there's anything that you've learned over the years with your 22 cutie, for parents that are just starting out on this journey, what advice would you give to them?
Definitely to find someone who's been in the same boat. Like I said, nobody's going to be in exactly the same boat, but having the support groups have been like huge for me. I think that knowing that somebody else can give you a little bit of advice, and if it's kind of like what you already were thinking would be the good idea, you're like, okay, good. Like it kind of pushes you over the edge. Okay, she does need that extra therapy. She does need, extra help at school. But go with your gut. I think a lot of times we try to listen to other people that are in the medical field, and we forget that we know our kids. We know what they're capable of. And yeah, sometimes we need the advice, but we know which way we should go. And the support groups have always been like key for me, because I feel like some days we have really hard days, but it's nice to also like tell our accomplishments on there so that other people know that like, oh man, it does get easy. It does get better.
And there will be good days. There will be bad days.
There will definitely be good days.
And there will be good days.
Sometimes I just look at her and I'm like, oh my God, you're my kid. And then I have like a sadness in that, that she's almost 6. Like, I feel like the first year was a blur. I feel like I lost out on her being a baby. And that makes me super sad sometimes. Like I look at pictures and I'm like, God, I don't remember you like that. And I remember her open heart surgery, taking a lot of pictures, and I lost them for like a year. I couldn't find them. And I finally found them. But I remember thinking, I'm going to want to remember this. It's a horrible time in my life, but I'm going to want to remember. And I want her to remember how strong she is. And documenting was a lot of things for me too, like writing things down and taking pictures and knowing that like next year is going to be different. Like next year, she's going to show me, she knows how to color in the lines. Each day, just think of something positive once a day. Try to take the days, like not just letting everything kind of compile, because it's so easy just to kind of let life take over. But I mean, she's like, today, she's like, I want to play Barbies. I'm like, then we're going to play Barbies when you get home. Let's play Barbies. Perfect. Because I was always told she'd never do any of that. Like she'd never play. She'd never have friends. It's those moments that like, I think we need to remember and value.
Is she the strongest person,
Oh, 100%. Oh. And I always laugh when people say, oh my God, you're so strong. I'm like, you haven't seen my kid who has been through so much, and she'll give you the stink eye if she doesn't like you. She's been through a lot. She's definitely has some PTSD from surgeries and going to the hospital. She's got a noise she makes when she walks in the hospital, and it's a, and it's always, we're going to be okay. We're going to get through this. We're going to, and I always bring incentives. Oh, wait, here's that stuffed animal. I got you. As soon as this is over, we get that. And she'll be like, so, I think that's a lot that people think too, that once they're little, they don't have PTSD, and the parents don't have PTSD, which I learned early on with her heart surgery that I did have it. And I was suffering from it when I went to a postpartum counseling at the hospital. And I remember just saying I needed to talk to somebody, and these nurses were like, you have PTSD. And I said, no, I wasn't in the Army. Like I wasn't in the Navy. I wasn't in war. And they're like, that has nothing to do with it. It has to do with traumatic things that have happened in your life. And I'm like, they're like, your daughter had open heart surgery and you had no idea it was happening. And I said, yep. And I feel like I'm still kind of suffering from that when I have so many procedures for her and flashbacks of things that we've gone through. It's getting easier, but
it's good that you recognize that. And it's good that you notice that now, so you can maybe work with someone or try to figure out how you can help yourself get through that. That's a lot. I mean, what you went through was traumatic.
Yeah.
Extremely traumatic. So that makes complete sense as to why you feel that way. And I guess I wanted to close with, one more question, and that being, what has your daughter taught you?
Strength. I mean, just like, I feel like she heard all these people saying she couldn't do things. And so most of the time she'd do things behind their back. Like, watch me. You think I can't do this? Her stubbornness, which is what I used to always go, oh my God, she's so stubborn. And I remember one of the nurses saying, but that's what's going to get her through everything. But if she wasn't stubborn, she wouldn't work as hard as she does.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay. She is like nothing I've ever seen. She's always trying to make you smile. She's very spunky, spunky, hard-headed. And she's always just teaching us something new. She's not afraid like of anything. And that's a little scary on some parts, but she's my daredevil. She's always been just fearless, I guess. I don't know what I would do without her, actually.
Yeah.
She completes us.
She completes you. I love it. I love it. Well, I hope one day I can meet her and your family. That'd be amazing.
We'll figure something
out. Well,
our next retreat, I'll bring them.
I know, right?
We'll figure it out.
I want to thank you, Tara, for sharing your heart and your family and your beautiful, beautiful little girl with us. Is there anything else you wanted to mention before we end?
I'm glad that I'm able to even help one more person. Then it's super, exciting for me. And I'm so glad that you're doing this. It's such a cool thing to be able to help other moms and other parents that are going through this journey, because it is a journey. And sometimes it's an uphill battle, but I think, just having other people that we can talk to about it makes it a little easier. So thank you for doing this.
Oh, well, thank you, Tara. Thank you for those kind words. And please stay in touch. And I wish you guys nothing but the absolute best. So thank you so much. Tara, thank you for sharing your 22Q cutie with us. She is a 1%er for sure, and such a strong, beautiful little girl. Thank you again. And for anyone who'd like to contact me, you can reach me at 22qpodcast@gmail.com with any questions, concerns, or if you're interested on being on this podcast. Until next time, thank you again. Please share this and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And never forget, 22Q family, that you are not alone.